Six Flags Great Adventure is the roller coaster capital of New Jersey, and it has the most B&M coasters of any park in the world. This park has 14 coasters, and it's my home park, and I'm lucky to have it because they're soon getting a 15th one, which I will be ranking in this video. Six Flags Great Adventure is a very good park for roller coasters, not just because they have a good amount, because their top coasters and even their bottom ones are of very good quality. Make sure to watch till the end to see where I placed this new coaster, Flash Vertical Velocity, coming in 2025. Also, make sure to like and subscribe with notifications so you know when more content like this is coming. I will be doing more long-form videos like rankings and reviews, so if you want to check that out, please do. It will really make me happy. Now let's get on with the video. Starting off with Little Devil Coaster, and the only coaster I actually haven't ridden. Now this is a kiddie coaster, and it does not seem like it's better than the other family coasters on this list. And I haven't ridden it yet because I just would rather ride El Toro more. But this coaster does seem decent for what it is. I mean, it's got a pretty standard kiddie coaster layout, so let's move on. Our first of many family coasters, Harley Quinn Crazy Train. Now, I'm pretty sure I only rode this once, and that was enough for me. I did not enjoy my experience that much because I just thought it was kind of janky, and it wasn't that fun. It also goes around like twice, which I did not like. And you can find this model at plenty of other parks, like Six Flags New England. Next, let's go from one janky ride to another. Runaway Mine Train. This coaster was the first one at its park, and it's not very good. It's 50 years old now, and it definitely shows its age. It's very rough and janky, and the only good part is the Death Hill, which I find a little bit overrated. It also doesn't help that my sister doesn't like this ride because I have to ride it a lot, and it is not an enjoyable experience. But the setting is good, and I do think it's a decent family coaster for what it is and when it was made. But if you're on a time crunch, definitely don't do this, and instead get more rides on El Toro. If you don't know what the Death Hill is, basically it's a hill towards the end of the ride that gives some pretty good and strong ejector airtime, but the restraints are a little big, so I don't find it that good. Anyways, now let's move on. Now there's even more family coasters, with this one being manufactured by Intamin. It's Skull Mountain at our number 12 spot. This is an indoor roller coaster that I don't think is that bad. I think it's pretty fun, it's smooth, and it is not that janky. The drop is decent, and I've ridden it a few times, so it does seem like it's a decent ride. I mean, the effects aren't really working like in this POV. It's just a black, dark box, but it's alright. I'm pretty sure it is a shared lap bar, but I don't think it goes down too much. But there isn't any airtime on this, which is sad. And that, I think, would be one of the reasons why you would put Runaway Mine Train over this. But to me, I like this better because of its smoothness and more enjoyable ride experience. This is also probably the second most themed coaster on this list because of its station and queue line. Anyways, let's move on from one family coaster to the final one. This is Batman the Dark Knight, and it's another indoor roller coaster. I sadly couldn't find any footage that is not pitch black like this, so it's mostly just going to be a dark POV because I was looking for a while to find footage that's not like this. Anyways, let's talk about the ride experience. It's a pretty good restraints, and the trains aren't bad. The line can get a little long because of its very small trains, 4 riders per train, and it's a Wild Mouse, which doesn't help. But I do think this is the best Wild Mouse I've ridden because of its good laterals, even some airtime, and good theming. This coaster has some decent dips and some cool quick turns. It's also very smooth, and I just find it overall pretty fun ride experience that I think everyone in the family could do. Now, this is also probably the most themed coaster at Six Flags Great Adventure because of its queue and the on-ride theming, which makes it better than Skull Mountain. Now let's finally get out of our family and kitty coasters with Green Lantern. And I do not like this coaster at all. I don't think anything is good about it. I know some people like the positive G-forces, which make your legs turn to jelly. I just don't think that's a good sensation I like to feel. Also, this coaster is rough, but I have not ridden it where, like riding defensively, which there's a certain type of way to ride it, which I should check it out again, but this ride gets really long lines because of its very slow operations with the stand-up part, and also a lot of people want to ride it for some reason. This coaster stats are decent though, with a length of 4,155 feet, a height of 154 feet, speed of 63 miles per hour, and a 45-degree vertical angle, also 5 inversions, which are not that good. Also, this coaster is just plopped down right in the parking lot with literally no grass like they did with Superman. It looks very ugly. Now let's go from one green coaster to another green coaster, which is on the other side of the park. We have the Joker. This coaster is not that bad. Even though I have it this low, this just proves how good Great Adventures lineup is. I think this coaster is pretty fun and overall an enjoyable experience. You get some good flipping, and it was actually the first coaster I rode at Six Flags Great Adventure. The restraints are a little big, but for a good reason. You get some good flipping, and I think it's really fun. This coaster has a good setting, and I would do it over and over again if it didn't always have a really long line, because I like this coaster, and I think it's underrated, even though it's at this spot. If you didn't already know, this is an S&S 40 free spin coaster, which has been cloned a lot at Six Flags Parks. Now let's go from one coaster that has been cloned a few times to another. This is Superman Ultimate Flight. It is our second B&M coaster on this list, and it's a flying coaster. I think it's really fun. I think this coaster gives a good flying sensation. It's fun. The pretzel loop is very fun and forceful, and the inline twist is also really cool. Although this coaster meanders and it's more calm than the other coasters on this list, I still think it's a really fun coaster and deserves to be over Green Lantern and Joker for these reasons. It's also just barely over 100 feet, so I think this is a family to thrill ride, in my opinion. Also, if you didn't already know, this coaster's clones are at Six Flags Over Georgia and Six Flags Great America, not Six Flags America. That's a different Superman. Anyways, another thing to note is this coaster can get insane lines, some of the longest at the park, and so make sure to check this out earlier in the day. Yet another B&M coaster we have here, it's Medusa, and this is a floorless coaster. This coaster is pretty fun. It's a nice looping coaster, and I think it's pretty close with Superman. But I do slightly prefer Medusa because I last rode it, and it was pretty fun. This coaster is smooth. It can be a little forceful at times, but overall, I think it's a pretty enjoyable ride experience with 7 inversions, which they don't feel like inversions except for the zero-G roll. They're just little fun things. Also, this Cobra roll comes like really close to the entrance of the main plaza, and it's really, really loud. The zero-G roll is nice and floaty, and the restraints are pretty comfortable, but there is one thing about this ride I don't like. I used to think it was a little boring because of the lack of airtime. Now, I love airtime, and this is not a coaster about airtime, which now I find it's okay, because some coasters don't have any airtime and just inversion focused or forces focused, and that's not airtime, and that's okay. This coaster also has these pretty cool helixes and these corkscrews, which are pretty snappy and forceful. This coaster also has a little bit of on-ride theming after the first drop, and this part here, coming up in 1 second, like this. Make sure not to skip out on this coaster, because a lot of people do, because it's all the way at the back end of the park, and if you don't know where you're going, you might miss it. Next up, we have Batman the Ride, and this coaster is very clones. It's at a lot of Six Flags parks, like the Joker. But this coaster is a lot better than the Joker for many reasons that I'll go over. This coaster is a little overrated though, because I just don't like it as much as other people like it. This coaster does try to rip your feet off with its positive G-forces and whippy transitions, but the snappy transitions are kind of janky and can make my head go side to side. But overall, this coaster is pretty fun and smooth, but it can get a really, really long line. Even with its good operations and long, big trains, it's a GP magnet. When people see that first loop, they want to get on. But the queue line isn't that bad and not really themed, but it just looks nice and is different than a normal queue line. This coaster has like 5 inversions and they're all pretty fun. The corkscrews are snappy and the loops are pretty fun that do rip your feet off. Also, this POV was filmed a little bit ago, so it doesn't have a nice new color scheme like it does in real life. Anyways, let's go from one of the oldest rides in the park, actually the second oldest coaster, to one of the newest, Jersey Devil. And this coaster is not themed to one of Six Flags IPs, which is cool because I like rides that are not always themed to a superhero. This is Six Flags Great Adventures new for 2021 RMC Raptor coaster, and I think it's pretty fun. I rewrote it, and it's not as bad as when I last rode it, where it was really rough. But I can say, out of these coasters that are already listed, this has got to be one of the roughest, because this coaster, the transitions are definitely not smooth. But this coaster delivers a lot of ejector airtime, and it is pretty fun. However, the restraints, they definitely can crush your thighs, and it hurts. The restraints are not good, but it doesn't take away as much from the ride experience as I thought it would when I first rode it. This coaster can deliver some good hang time and airtime, but with the restraint, it can definitely hurt your thighs, and with the roughness, it can definitely not feel comfortable. This coaster has decent pacing, and I'm pretty sure it's the tallest, fastest, and longest single rail coaster that RMC ever made, and just single rail coasters in the world. However, this coaster, with its small trains of only 12 riders, can get a really long line, and you might have to wait a while for this because you do want it warmed up for a good paced ride. This coaster is also my least favorite RMC, even though I've ridden 3. Definitely my least favorite, and the only Raptor I've ridden. Anyways, now let's go to our final B&M coaster, Nitro. This coaster model is the best one by B&M, and it's the Hypercoaster model. This model delivers good floater airtime throughout the entire ride with really good restraints and really smooth ride experience. It is very long, and it is very fun. This coaster also doesn't disappoint in stats, too. 230 feet and 80 miles an hour is pretty good, considering Kingda Ka is just on the other side of the park. I know this coaster is many people's favorite at the park, and I do think it is very fun, but it definitely doesn't have the pacing or airtime of the other coasters. Nitro only has a few good moments of airtime, and some of it is not strong at all. It's very mild floater on my last ride, and that was in the back row. The drop is decent, and I do think it's a good coaster, but sometimes it can crawl and sometimes it can haul. This coaster's chain lift does give really good views, though, of the forest, and if you look back, the other side of the park. The coaster's drop is pretty good, but I do find it to be very different depending on what day it is or how the ride is running that day. It completely changes for some reason. But just a heads up, if you haven't already rode, the picture is right at the valley of the first drop. Another thing to mention is that towards the middle of the ride to the end, there is a helix. And this helix is very, very strong G-forces that can even make you gray out. Then it goes into a mid-course brake run. Another thing to mention is that this coaster can't really get a long line because of its great capacity and great operations. The longest I've had to wait was like an hour, and that's because the ride broke down while I was in line. The average max wait times are usually only about 25 minutes, and if you come in holiday at the park, you can definitely marathon this thing because it is open and it's really, really cold. I'm lucky to have the opportunity to ride this coaster about 10 times in the Holiday in the Park season, and it definitely froze my hands off. That concludes all of our B&Ms, which there is just so many. This park has the most of any, and all but one are very quality rides, and this is the best one. Anyways, now let's go the other side of the park for Kingda Ka, the world's tallest roller coaster. This coaster goes 456 feet in the air at a speed of 128 miles an hour, and it accelerates in that speed in just 3.5 seconds. This coaster launch is crazy, and it goes on for a long time. It gives also 2 good airtime moments with the Top Hat and Bunny Hill, and I think it's a really fun ride. I don't find the restraints very comfortable on this ride, though, because they're intimate's hard over the shoulder restraints, and they can crush your thighs and it'll hurt. The strong positive G's of the pullouts of the Top Hat. The strong positive G's are enough to make this restraint go deep into your thighs, and it will hurt. Once you're at the top, you will get a very good view of everything you see, and I heard you can even see the Philly. Another thing about this coaster is that it can be a little rough in the back rows. Not a little, a lot. This coaster will definitely be rough in the back rows. That's why I recommend sitting in the front row for the best ride. Now let's go from a coaster that might be removed to a coaster that will open. Flash Vertical Velocity. This is the first new-gen Vekoma thrill coaster in the United States. And I know it may be unpopular to put this in this place, but I think this will be a really good coaster. In the advertisement here, it says it has 10 airtime moments, 60 miles an hour, and 174 feet. That's pretty good. Another thing is, I just really like launch coasters and coasters with a lot of airtime, and I think this will be really good. This coaster's appearance and color scheme also look really cool, and the Flash IP doesn't seem to be used very much in the Six Flags chain. Another thing is, these restraints, I like vest restraints, and this is the Vekoma vest restraints, and I think they're pretty comfortable. This coaster also looks like it has some pretty cool and fun inversions with hang time and air time, so I think this coaster will be a really good addition to Six Flags Great Adventure, and yeah, even better than Kingda Ka. Now let's go to El Toro, and I think this is easily the best coaster here for its strong and sustained ejector airtime throughout these 4 moments, which just make the ride so good. This ride also has really good pacing, and the switchbacks are really cool too. This coaster is just so fun, and it's even pretty smooth in the non-wheel seats. If you want to know more about this coaster, make sure to watch my full-length review of this, because I go into detail on who made it and when it was made, and a lot of other things. So like and subscribe so you can get more reviews like that. Anyways, this coaster is just so fun, and it gives really good views. Also, it doesn't look that small compared to Kingda Ka. Considering it's not even half the height, this wooden structure is just so big and so cool. I'm pretty sure it's even the world's tallest wooden coaster with 181 feet and 70 miles an hour, with also 4,400 feet of track. This coaster only has a duration of about 1 minute and 40 seconds, but that's okay because it packs so much in with it. This coaster is also one of the steepest wooden coasters with 76 degrees on a vertical angle. Another cool thing about this wooden coaster is that it has a cable lift, which is not like many wooden coasters. Many wooden coasters feature a chain lift. This is a cable lift, which makes it much faster and smoother and quieter. Besides ejector airtime, this coaster also has plenty of floater airtime moments, like going through the structure. Another thing I noticed is that on my last rides, the ejector airtime wasn't as much of ejector and is more of pretty strong floater, maybe ejector, but it wasn't as strong as usual. Anyways, that concludes my ranking of the Six Flags Great Adventures coasters. Do you agree? Also, comment down below where you think Flash will place, because I know my opinion of Flash is a little higher than other people because I just love airtime and launch coasters, maybe a little bit more than the average person. I think I'm pretty lucky to have Six Flags Great Adventure as my home park because it just has so many quality coasters and many coasters too. I'm new, and liking and subscribing would definitely help me with the YouTube algorithm. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe because it took me a while. Anyways, have a great day, stay positive, and keep riding coasters. Goodbye.
Wow, wow, wow.